last Tuesday. It's what I was doing last Tuesday, observing the Feast of the Transfiguration.
Oh, yes.
It came and it went this year. It's not close to a Sunday, so we don't observe it as a liturgical feast on the weekend. But the Feast of the Transfiguration is an extraordinarily important one, and I would say that it's wonderful that it happened during this week, because this has been a very difficult week in the life of our country. I don't know about you, but I just seem to be getting hit over and over again by the violence that we are being presented to. And the Transfiguration is Jesus' way of showing the disciples that beyond his torture and death, beyond the violence that's about to come when they enter Jerusalem, there is a heavenly vision that Jesus is more than just a person. Jesus is an immortal soul that embodies the Son of God. It reminds us, if we can glimpse what happened in our minds or in our souls on the top of that mountain, as Jesus is transfigured into a raiment of white and stands glowing, and he stands with figures from the Old Testament, and he is there in his literally cosmic, heavenly role. If we can imagine that, it can help us as we struggle through darkness in our lives, as we struggle with violence that we face, to remember we also are eternal beings, that there is more to this world than darkness and violence, that there is light and goodness and justice and caring and forgiveness, and that you and I as disciples are called not only to see it, but to try to more fully bring about the beloved community of God. It seems very hard to do right now, but the Feast of the Transfiguration gives us a glimmer of hope. It gives us something to look ahead to help us get through, to make the getting through better for ourselves and for others. How can we do this? Is there a tool? Is there an idea that can walk with us today? And I'd like to offer to you the words from the epistle today. Because the epistle is an ironic one as well as the Feast of the Transfiguration happening this week. This epistle is often called Paul's letter to the Hebrews. But the early church knew, when they were putting together the Bible, the canon, in the 2nd and 3rd centuries, they all knew St. Paul didn't write this. They knew it. But what they saw here, what they recognized in this anonymous epistle, was true wisdom, was the Holy Spirit, was inspiration on an amazing level. So they decided to put it in with the letters from St. Paul so it wouldn't be lost. They connected this anonymous writing with one of the greatest authors of the New Testament to make sure you and I got it today, to make sure you and I inherited these words so we could say them. And the words I would like to uplift are these. Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. When we look about our world, we need to have this assurance of being hopeful, even when things don't seem particularly hopeful. We have to have the conviction of things not seen. You can see acts of goodness and justice and light and love in our world. You can see the acts of them. You can see the fruits of them. But ultimately, the value, the essence, is beyond what we can see. You can't go to the store and buy a canister of faith or a can of assurance or a bar of hope. But we have faith that these things exist. And this is what gets us through. This anonymous writer speaking to us today, telling us to have assurance of the things that we hope for, to have a conviction of things not seen, of light in the midst of darkness, of peace in the midst of violence, of joy in the midst of unrest. This is our calling as Christians. This is what it means to have faith in something better, something bigger, something we call the beloved community of God that you and I are charged to bring about in our world and not let slide away. A few of you who've been to my office know that amongst my favorite works of art are 4 magnificent portraits by the Hudson River Landscape School of Art, Thomas Cole, who painted in the 19th century. Amazing vistas. And 4 of his paintings are called The Voyage of Life. And it takes us through the stages of our lives. They used to hang in the Children's Hospital in Cincinnati. Today there's a special rotunda built in the National Gallery of Art in Washington just for them. He painted these upon his conversion to the Episcopal Church. And he brought all of his talents in depicting incredible, incredible scenic landscapes to the inner landscape of the soul. And in each one, there's a little boat, and it's the boat of life. And an angelic spirit is guiding this boat from the back, where the person in the boat can't see the angelic spirit is there. But the first painting is called Childhood, and in the boat, the soul is a baby. The next one is called Manhood, or Youth, and in that painting, the soul is a young person. And then in the grown-up painting, the soul is mature, but being tempted by all kinds of clouds above. And then in the last one, old age. The soul is elderly, and the spirit, the angelic guiding spirit, suddenly appears to the man for the first time, and he realizes he's had a companion, he's had a guide all this time, walking with him, sailing with him, looking out for him. And the spirit points forward, and as he gasps, he sees that the darkness fades away, and in the light of heaven, more of these wonderful spirits are flying about who have guided all the other people on their journeys as well. My friends, they are such a depiction of faith, of hope, of assurance that there is goodness in our world. There is the love of God upon upon each of us, even though sometimes we may feel alone. Even though sometimes the events of our world don't seem filled with faith at all. And so, this morning, remember the message of the Transfiguration. Remember that there is more going on around us than the news might give us, because the good news is also here. We are eternal spirits. We are called to be transfigured and agents of transfiguration. And at the end of our voyage, we also will be ultimately transfigured and see ourselves and one another as that precious, eternal soul that God has made, full of light and love and destined for a future